Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Total Saints podcast. I'm Martin Starke, and each week I'm joined by our panel of Saints experts to reflect on the last 7 days following Southampton Football Club. We're recording this episode of TSP live tonight. We sent out the invite to our patrons to watch the podcast as it's happening and to get involved in the conversation in real time. Now, as it's our first time doing a virtual live podcast, I'll be honest with you, anything could happen. We are going to be looking at doing more live streams after the international break across our Facebook and our Twitter pages, as well as on our YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe to be one of the first to find out more. I've checked tonight, scheduling-wise, we're up against Strictly Come Dancing and Gary Lineker's new game show. So if you are watching live, thank you very much for choosing us. Coming up this week on the pod, reaction to the 1-0 win against Aston Villa at St Mary's on Friday evening. And we look ahead to the trip to Norwich after another international break. Let me first introduce you to our guests this week. Owner of SaintsWeb, Steve Grant. Steve, you're still in Dubai?
Yep, here for another few weeks.
So what was the time difference with the game and the kickoff on Friday night? I did feel for you.
Yeah, midnight kickoff. So that was fun. But Friday over here is basically because the Arabic weekend is Friday, Saturday. So Friday night is basically their Saturday night. So the bar we were in was absolute carnage. If anybody's been to Dubai, then they've been to Barasti. They'll kind of know they'll know exactly what I'm referring to. But it was just absolute carnage. That place because it's like got a sort of beach bar attached to it as well, so you can be sat in the swimming pool drinking cocktails and all kinds of nonsense going on. Live bands and just everybody being very, very drunk, and we've got our own little corner that's been sort of christened the Franny Benali stand, where we watch the games.
Is there many of you? Is there much of an appetite for Saints versus Villa at midnight on a Friday?
I think there were 9 of us there Friday. I mean, some games last season we had. I think the Leicester semi-final. I think we had about 20-25 down there. Everybody came out for the big game, but hoping to kind of get the numbers back up a little bit as the season goes on. I mean, the Saturday 3:00 games are usually the best attended because it's a convenient time. It's like either 6 or 7 o'clock here. Hopefully get some more along as the season goes on.
Glad you enjoyed it. Also with us is the writer of the blog League One -10, Glen de la Cour. Can I just check, Glen, that door is locked behind you, is it? We're not going to have a BBC News moment with somebody breaking in.
Might do. Makes bit of danger on live TV. Yeah, why not? I mean, I've told everybody, but who knows? People, I'm famous for having people interrupting what I'm doing here, so we'll see what happens.
The more, the merrier. Also with us is the Athletics dedicated Saints reporter Dan Sheldon. Does that mean you get a Saturday off, Dan, if the game's on a Friday night? A rare Saturday off?
Yeah, I've had the weekend off, although I've done a bit of work this afternoon with all the kind of stuff that's going on. So was due to be a weekend off, but probably worked half a day in the end. So, but yeah, all good.
Lovely stuff. Of course, the biggest hello and thank you is always reserved to our patrons, wherever you're listening or watching this week. Welcome to episode 175 of the Total Saints podcast. Now, it's fair to say Friday night football has not really been our friend over the years, but what did you make of the game at the weekend, Glenn?
We got the job done eventually. It was similar to Watford in lots of ways. Very good first half, got a goal in front, missed a few chances, and the second half was a bit of a struggle. But we got there in the end. So I don't complain about the manner of any win. Basically, if we get the job done and get the 3 points, then I'm quite happy. Belting goal from Adam Armstrong at the start. Most impressive thing about that was that he even tried it. Most strikers who are in a bit of a goal drought wouldn't even try and hit that. And a fantastic goal. And that set us up for the first half, really, where we missed a few. Stuart Armstrong missed one. Ward-Prowse had got a good save out of Martinez. And Romeo should have got that on target really when he drilled it over the bar. So it was a good first half. And of course we had, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, Mr. El Ghazi, who should of course have been
he's
sent
on the
off.
list.
Oh, I mean, ridiculous that he wasn't sent off. And that would have made the second half completely different. As it was, the second half was a bit of a struggle. Ralph rolled the dice with changing the formation, bringing Bianco on, and at the end of the day, whilst it still wasn't pretty, the end justified the means. We got to the end of the game, we won 1-0. Villa didn't really cause us many problems, so happy days. So I can't say I enjoyed the second half, but got the job done.
Plenty to talk about this week. Steve, did you enjoy this one? Was there enough to keep you awake into the small hours of Saturday?
Well, I had enough alcohol there, so it was it was fine. No, I mean, I basically echo what Glenn said. In the first half, I mean, that game should have been put to bed. On 2 counts, obviously they should have been down to 10 men, and we should have been 3 or 4 up. I mean, quite how Stuart Armstrong has missed that one from pretty much under the crossbar, with the freedom of the 6-yard box. No idea, but I mean, I think the goal actually kind of goes back to something that we mentioned last week with obviously Armstrong missed a few chances at Vicarage Road, and like we kind of thought, well, is he snatching at chances? But actually, no. As we discussed last week, that's kind of the way he hits shots. He takes them early. He doesn't really mind where he's taking them from. And on evidence from Friday night, he's quite happy to use his weaker foot as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that actually kind of works in our favour. It does. I mean, it does help when you're up against a Villa defence who just looks so ropey. And obviously Armstrong's got what 20 odd goals in the Championship last season, and let's be blunt, that was up against a Championship defence on Friday night.
Yeah, fair. First half, obviously, Saints were excellent. Same old story. The second half, not killing teams off. I know you've written about this, Dan, this week. It was the same old thing, and you kind of felt Villa might get back in this, and if they do, it's our own fault.
Yeah. I feel as though we've kind of discussed like Southampton missing chances sort of ad nauseum on the podcast over recent weeks, and the game should have been out of sight by half time, and then it just makes for a nervy second half when it doesn't need to be nervy at all. And there was no way Villa were going to be any worse than they were in the first half, because they were just shocking. I think Southampton beat them to every single ball. They just suffocated Aston Villa. It was really, really impressive. One of the most complete 45 minutes of football I've seen from Southampton this season. I thought it was that good. And then in the second half, they started seeing a bit deeper. But, for as poor as Southampton were in the second half, they still restricted Villa to kind of pop shots or nothing chances, really. I still can't remember Aston Villa really testing McCarthy in the second half. They didn't create anything.
I think they only had one on target second half, which was that one that he tipped over straight at him.
Yeah. So, although we can all sit here and say, it wasn't a great performance in the second half, they still did more than enough to kind of keep Villa at bay. But it was similar to Watford, just in the sense that all the time it's 1-0, it's just, the other team needs like half a chance or a chance, and that's it, and the game's level. Then, had Villa scored, of course, this is hypothetical, they'd have come out with their tails wagging, and Saints would have sat deeper and deeper, and you would have backed Villa to get another one, because that's how these things go. But I don't think we can kind of criticise that too much. It capped off a really good run of results for the club, and key word being momentum going into that break, which is all important.
And Dan, I just want to stay with you, because we spoke about Adam Armstrong last week, but you wrote about it this week. Something about the fact that he's not afraid of having a shot, not always from in the 6-yard box, but he'll have a go. And eventually, like on Friday night, one of those is going to come off.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I mean, I'm not trying to claim an assist or anything. But
you were the first person I thought of when he scored.
The piece, the piece I did in the week with our data guy Mark Carey was just kind of looking at, well, where is he taking these shots from? And I think he only had one shot inside the area out of 27. So many of them are coming from outside the box, and if you keep on taking them, eventually they're going to go in. And perhaps the most impressive thing was that it was left-footed. It was just such an instinctive strike, really, really impressive. Just, kind of out of nowhere, really. It was one of them ones that he'd probably have a go at that in all the other games he's played, and it would end up in Rosette, but just absolutely hit it on the sweet spot. And you kind of, for his sake, you sort of lament the fact there's a break now, because I'm sure he'd be itching to kind of play Norwich next week, but he's got to wait a couple of weeks before that.
Let's talk about some of those misses. Glenn, were you at the right end for Stuart Armstrong's miss?
No, I was at the opposite end.
Too much time to think, do you reckon?
It just wasn't committed to it, was he? It just seemed like he sort of swung a lazy leg at it, and that's the sort of thing I complain about with the team I try and coach, park football. You've got to be fully committed, and he didn't look like he believed that he was going to score, and he just sort of waved his foot at it, and it went vertically upwards. So not his finest moment. And we know what a good player he is and how well he can strike the ball. So I was a bit surprised. I'm at the other end, sort of squinting, thinking, was that Armstrong? That was really bad.
Was it flag up? Was he offside?
Yeah. But no, he wasn't offside. It was on the half volley, but having seen Adam Armstrong hit a half volley earlier on, you would have hoped that he could have scored from there. But there you go. I mean, I think in his defence, he could probably still claim to be a little bit rusty, having been out of the team for a long time and coming back in. But no harm done.
And Steve, a word on James Ward-Prowse. I thought really good game. That tackle on Buendia, I thought was my heart was in my mouth a bit when I saw him flying in for that. But definitely one of his better performances since he's been back in the side.
Yeah, I think he's kind of possibly even had a sort of realization that he's not been quite at the top of his game like he was for large parts of last season. And yeah, I mean, the challenge of coming up against a side who showed kind of slightly half-assed interest in him in the summer was a good one to put him up against, and for him to show what a good player he can be. And yeah, I mean, him and Romeo in that central midfield just absolutely dominated. I mean, I know Villa are missing a few players in that position at the moment. Like Douglas Luiz, I think is kind of quite a good player in that holding role, similar sort of situation that Romeo does for us. But yeah, they had no real answer to us through the middle in that first 45 minutes. Just completely outbattled them. Which, I mean, while we know that Prowsey's always happy to stick his foot in, he's still fairly slightly built, and you're always quite surprised when he comes out the other side with the ball at his feet. And yet,
well, the goal came from him winning a 50-50 basically, didn't it? Because I know, he probably didn't mean to just belt it up in the air and create a goal that way, but that was what we were doing in the first half. Everyone was winning the 50-50s, and that was kind of what changed in the second half. We suddenly weren't winning them all, and that put us under pressure. But
Adams and Armstrong up front, Broja on the bench. How did they do as a front pair for you, Dan?
Yeah, they did what they've done throughout all the games. To be honest, I thought Adams. Armstrong scored the goal, but I thought Adams again was just so impressive. And my colleague Greg Evans, our Villa writer, who obviously doesn't watch Southampton that often, was really, really impressed by Adams, his work rate, his kind of just endeavour to sort of close down every space. He just looked, it's quite a simplistic way to look. He was just bang up for it again. And I thought he kind of followed on from his Watford performance where he was just doing the same sort of stuff. And I think what can be deceptive about Armstrong as well is how quick he is. Yeah. He is so quick. The ball goes back to Martinez or a defender's kind of dawdling on it. He's so quick to close down that gap, which I thought he showed in abundance on Friday night. So as a pair, yeah, they were, you can't kind of criticize them too much. The start of the season, they seem to create a lot more together. And that doesn't seem to have happened over the past couple of games. But look, Southampton have won them both. So again, you're kind of being particularly picky if you start criticizing them for that. It's
interesting that we've gone from no strikers in form to suddenly having three strikers in form, and you pick two from three now, and you could make an argument for any pairing out of the three. Whereas a couple of weeks ago, Adams and Armstrong looked like they couldn't buy a goal, and Broja looked to be the man who was going to play all season and stop us from getting relegated. But now we've got 3 strikers in form, and that can only be a good thing. And as someone said earlier, it's a shame we've got yet another international break.
Another clean sheet as well, the 5th of the season. So we need to discuss the back 5, really. I didn't think that was Tino's best game, really. And I've read conflicting things about Carl Walker-Peters as well. Some said man of the match, others just a hindrance going forward and not having a left foot. What did you make of the defensive display, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of all of that is partially true. I don't think Tino was particularly great, but then I think a lot of it was basically Villa. Anything that Villa did that was vaguely sort of even looking to get out of their own half in the first half was down his side through El Ghazi, which is why obviously El Ghazi was involved in so much kind of sort of on that touchline. And I think, kind of goes without saying, really, doesn't it? If El Ghazi had been sent off as he should have done on either of the 2 where he should have had his second booking, then all of a sudden Livramento's got a load more space down that flank, and he can bomb forward a little bit more. But I think his defensive positioning still needs a bit of work on. It's kind of a little bit. He does get a bit Cedric every so often in that he kind of
careful, you'll set Glen off.
Wears tight shirts, no shoes.
He just kind of switches off a little bit. And there was one moment in the first half, one of the few times that Villa got the ball in our box, and it was actually Che Adams who was chasing back and won the header that just basically got knocked down into McCarthy's hands to pick up and sort of clear the damage. But it wasn't a great performance from him, but the kid's 18. He's not going to be able to be consistent week in, week out at the highest level at that age, having played 12 first team games. Walker-Peters on the left. Yeah, I mean, I think he played well. Certainly defensively, he was very good. Going forward, first half, him and El Yunusi linked up quite a lot, which was interesting. The problem is him not having a particularly strong left foot kind of means that the sort of overlapping runs that you would expect from Perro, for example, don't quite work out in the same way. But basically, Walker-Peters, all he's got to do is get a bit more confidence to use that left foot in the same way that Redmond has in the last couple of games. Obviously, he was missing with COVID on Friday, and we did kind of miss that sort of ability to put a cross in with our left foot when we were overlapping the fullback, because I mean Matty Cash let us do it time and time again. He was all over the place, which is glorious karma for last season's non-awarded handball.
Yeah, that's true. Carl Walker-Peters at left back. Glen, has he done enough for you, or is it just a square peg in a round hole?
I didn't think he was as good as he was against Watford. He seemed more reluctant to use his left foot on Friday than he did against Watford. It's just something he's got to work at. I mean, we touched on it last week. He knows he ain't getting in the team at right back. So in order to be a functioning left back, you have got to cross the ball with your left foot on occasions. And if you're prepared to do that, and you show the fullback that you're prepared to do that, then he knows you can go either way, and you're happy to go either way. And it just makes, the opposition right back's job a lot more difficult. I thought Walker-Peters was okay. He defended well. The bottom line is that is a fullback's primary job. They got nothing going down his side, and he did a very good job. So I would certainly see no reason, based on the last couple of performances, to leave him out. The only time I would certainly put Perro in it is when we're playing teams that are going to camp on the edge of their own penalty area, because then you need to have more ability to go down the sides, and you need to make the pitch as wide as possible, and that is in effect what a left-footed left back does. So, but Norwich away is the next game. I see no reason to take Walker-Peters out of the team against a team that are fairly open and not the best defensively.
What did you make of the defensive display, Dan?
Yeah, well, they kept another clean sheet, so
Job done.
again. Yeah, no, I know. I mean, obviously not as simple as that, but I thought Tino probably looked like the past few weeks have kind of caught up on him. Don't think it was his best game. I thought he was okay in the first half, to be fair, but the second half I thought he struggled and just looked a bit tired, which is understandable. Although I in the first half, when El Ghazi should have been sent off, I do think one thing Tino is very good at for quite a young player as well is getting his body in between the ball and the opponent. He seems very good at that and kind of drawing fouls. Much what that's like the only thing Shane Long can still do is kind of get his body in between the opponent and the ball and tend to win fouls. I think Tino's pretty good at that for such a young player. Kyle, I thought, it was, every game he plays there, he's going to get better. Salisu, again, is just kind of coming into his own this season as he looks so impressive as a centre half. And you kind of feel that if Jack Stevens comes back in, the only one that's going to drop out would be Bednarek. I think Salisu looks nailed on pretty much now to be the main defender at Saints. And I think Alex again had nothing to do. Really had to make one save and made it, and flapped at a couple of crosses, which he's not done in recent weeks, which was a bit disappointing. But ultimately, that's what his 5th clean sheet now, which is behind only Chelsea's Mendy. So I know I got a bit of stick for saying he should be in the England squad this time round, but I still stand by that.
Well, no, I was going to bring this up because you mentioned it on the pod last week. Then you went public on Twitter with it this week. You mentioned Mendy there, the only keeper with more clean sheets, and his distribution was a bit poor. But actually, it seems like there is a growing case. I don't think you're the only person banging the drum at the moment, Dan.
Well, no, I think one of the replies to my tweet was, "He's the worst goalkeeper I've ever seen." And
that's Twitter for you, though, right?
Blimey, I could probably name quite a few worse than Alex McCarthy. I just think, statistically, I was looking at some data before I came on. Actually, like, he is miles ahead some of the other goalkeepers in the league. He's of the other kind of 14. I was tagged in a picture. He's above all the English goalkeepers in the Premier League. He's ahead of Pickford, ahead of Pope. But I've kind of banged that drum, and he's not going to be in the England squad. I didn't think he would get in the England squad, as I said last week, but I did think he deserved to be based on his form. We can't have it all the way. We can't say, he's a rubbish goalkeeper, and the reason we've kept 5 clean sheets is because of Salisu. I mean, it doesn't work like that, in my opinion.
We're streaming live this evening, by the way, so there's a chance for people to put some comments next to our broadcast. And a few people asking, Nick, for example, and Ed as well, about Salisu, and does he then leave in the summer? Nick says, how much should we hold out for in January for Salisu? This is always going to be the problem, isn't it, Steve, when one of our players starts performing well? He's gone a bit under the radar so far, but I noticed that this week people are starting to pick up on his stats.
Yeah, I think we should frantically sort of wheel out the social media bandwagon of Mohamed Salisu is the new Wesley Hoot, because I think that'll be our best chance of keeping him under the radar for a little bit longer. I mean, look, every game is available on TV in some way or another, whether it's legal or otherwise. So people are going to wise up. The scouting across the Premier League is obviously very good, and people will know what they're dealing with here. We obviously scouted him significantly when we signed him 18 months or so ago. So I mean, I find it difficult to believe that other clubs didn't already have that data on file anyway. So what we've seen from him is kind of what we thought we were going to get, but I think we kind of expected him to be sort of competing for a start straight away. But I think it's actually probably worked out quite well to give him a year to acclimatise, and now, as you say, he's probably one of the first names on the team sheet.
Dan, probably a question for you. Sai says, could Tino play in front of Kyle Walker-Peters on that side? That was something that I think Ralph addressed this week, did he, in the press conference?
Yeah, I think it's something we've all kind of considered, and something especially at the start of the season, I was thinking surely it kind of would make more sense to do that. But then you kind of quickly remember, look, I don't spend every day on the training pitch with these guys. Ralph's the manager. Ralph must see something on the training pitch that suggests that combination won't work. And I think yeah, I think there's a big difference as well with kind of receiving the ball where Tino does and running with it when you've got kind of 60 yards of grass in front of you and you're always looking up, to receiving the ball with your back to goal, turning and then running into space. They're two different disciplines. And yeah, I think it would probably be asking quite a lot of Tino. I'm sure Tino could do it because he's kind of taken it to like a duck to water, isn't he? But I don't see any reason to change it now. I think he's well established in the right back role. Clearly very good at it, very good at making those runs. And if you're then asking him to all of a sudden receive the ball with his back to goal and do different things, so early on in his career, it's only going to confuse him, I think. So let him continue developing on what he's doing. Ralph has clearly not seen anything in training that suggests playing those two on the same side will work. Otherwise, I'm sure he would have already done it. And I think, yeah, there's just no need for me, in my opinion, to do it at the moment.
I do wonder actually with the issue, there might be an issue with playing Kyle Walker-Peters at left back, and that's Thierry Small, who came in from Everton as a highly rated youngster, obviously intending to, follow the same path as Tino and get in the team relatively quickly. And because of Tino's success, he's kind of found himself third choice left back now. And
yeah,
I'm sure when he came in, he thought he was going to be second choice. Yeah,
well, I had a conversation with someone about Thierry Small actually within the club a couple of days ago, and I was just kind of trying to gauge what's his development, and he didn't have a pre-season whatsoever. So he came in, he had to then catch up, play kind of minutes in the B team, and I was told if there was if the FA Cup third round was next week, Thierry would be starting. He'd be playing that game. So they are impressed with how he's developed, and they're very impressed by his level that he showed in training and in the B team games. But it's just taken him a little bit longer because he had no preseason whatsoever and had to kind of catch up the kind of basic fitness levels with the rest of the squad. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see him appear a bit more often. But yeah, as you say, it's unlikely he's going to get ahead of Perot and Walker-Peters. And he probably has joined thinking, having seen Livramento and the success he's having, it is kind of like, oh, I thought I was going to come here and play a bit more, but now, as you say, I'm my third choice.
Be interesting to see what happens. Yeah. Mark says, regarding the defence, good to see Ralph change it relatively early on. I think it was 55 minutes, bringing Lianco on and playing a back three with the fullbacks pushing on. Great observation. And were you surprised to see that happen so early on in that second half, Glenn? Or was that more about how Villa were playing and having to match up?
Well, Villa had basically taken over the game, hadn't they? They'd moved Leon Bailey inside because he was absolutely hopeless out on the right wing in the first half, and they moved him inside. And suddenly they had two strikers, and Ralph wanted to put a spare man in at the back. I don't think when the substitution happened, I don't think you can ever be 100% sure it's going to work. As a supporter, you're watching thinking, not. It's an early one, and it's taking off Stuart Armstrong, who is, one of our better players most of the time. So there was a little bit of apprehension about it, but the end justified the means. We got to the end of the game. Lianco did okay. He had that one little incident with Bednarek where they both left it to each other. And the alternative would have been not leaving it, and Lianco would have wellied him over the stand or something. But they both left it. But we got away with that one. But yeah, so I guess I was a little bit surprised. I think we're still stuck in the mode of expecting Ralph to not make a change until the 75th minute. But he's proved on a number of occasions this season that he is willing to do it. He's now got the players that he's got the confidence that he can bring players on, and it's not going to. It's not going to weaken things. So the substitutions are tending to come a little bit earlier. So no, fair play. And sometimes players are just going to have to get used to getting dragged on 55, 60 minutes if that's what the team demands. It's a team game at the end of the day.
It's a good problem to have, isn't it? Ed says he'd play Lianco ahead of Bednarek. Is that a change that you would make, Steve, going forward, or do you leave Bednarek in because of the clean sheets and it seems to be working all right?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit soon to be making those sort of calls. I mean, I've said a few times. I think Bednarek's level certainly relative to the rest of the defence has dropped over the last 18 months or so. But last couple of games he's been reasonably solid again. So yeah, I mean, Lianco, at the end of the day, we've seen one fairly rubbish game from him, one very good game, and 35, 40 minutes of a decent-ish game on Friday night from him. So I don't think we can really be sort of jumping to any conclusions and saying that he should now be starting over a guy who's played 100 odd games for us now. I think it's probably going to take a little bit of time. I mean, obviously over Christmas, the game's going to come thick and fast. We might be rotating a little bit. I think Salisu's one booking away from a suspension now. So yeah, I mean, there's going to be opportunities for Lianco to play.
The chance is going to come, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
When does the AFCON happen? Because Salisu will obviously be off for that.
Well, I don't know if he will, because he's not played for Ghana yet. He's not been called up. So
right.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, who knows?
Fingers crossed. Glenn, would you like to talk about the referee? I just need to remind you that we're streaming live. There isn't the opportunity to edit out the libel or the slander. Well, pick your words carefully. But Andy Madley, how did he do?
Andy Madley's got an older brother called Bobby Madley, who was a referee a few years ago, and then he was only 32 and he kind of left in mysterious circumstances, and you can all Google it and see the very amusing reasons why.
I'm nervous, but carry on.
He was supposed to have left. Anyway, and Steve knows exactly what I'm talking about. So Bobby Madley was a horrendous referee for us. He was the classic Kevin friend. If you had him when you were playing the big boys, it was an absolute waste of time. Just dreadful referee. Andy Madley's his brother. We've had him before. He hasn't been too bad, but how you can see basically two identical fouls, book one and not book the other, and they're only 5 minutes apart or 10 minutes apart, is absurd. I can kind of understand him not giving him a booking for the dive for the penalty, because no one's getting booked for that these days. It just seems to be something that they're not booking players for anymore, which is a shame. But the second foul was just, I mean, it was actually worse than the first one. It was just a hack. It was nowhere near the ball. He knew Tino was gone if he let him go, so he hacked him down. So he has to be sent off. And I thought in the second half he was horrendous as well. He gave Villa a corner at one point, which didn't hit anybody. Just went straight off, and he gave a corner. And there was one right in front of me in the last couple of minutes where Che Adams was trying to shield the ball, and Mings just booted him in the stomach. And somehow he gave Villa off. I don't know what he gave, but they got the free kick. It was just absurd. So yeah, he was a shambles, and you would hope, if there's any sort of accountability, that they would at least be asking questions about why he didn't send El Ghazi off for the second foul. But that's that sort of thing's kept in the dark, and we don't know what goes on.
We're told there's some sort of internal league table that the PGMOL maintains that kind of ranks the performance of, and yeah, you can insert that as a typo if you like, the word ranks, the performances of the referees over all of their games through some whatever metric system they use, and yeah, I mean, you look at that and think, well, yeah, he's going to be marked down for that, certainly. But the problem with that is that the referees that get marked down then get given the games for the lesser clubs in the league. So that just means it's more likely that we're going to get them, yeah. That we're going to have Andy Madley refereeing us again, which is just crap, isn't it?
On a more positive note, do we think that Ralph's now found his two number 10s? It's probably worth just a little word on them. Dan, obviously Redmond missing because of his in testing positive for COVID, which I thought was unfortunate. But obviously the two that started made a pretty good case.
Yeah, I think so. And as Glenn kind of said earlier, anyone, due to the kind of depth on the bench, it could be anyone that gets sort of pulled off on the hour mark. And this time it was Stuart Armstrong. I still think if Redmond was fit, I think he would have started the game. Ralph, I think he's got 2 assists this season, and Ralph sees that and thinks, well, if no one else is creating, kind of, well, at least he is. So he's doing something right. And so, yeah, I do think Redmond would have started that game, and Armstrong probably would have been on the bench had he not tested positive for COVID. So I don't think Ralph's probably fully settled on his number 10s. They seem kind of more interchangeable, perhaps, than most of the positions. it looks difficult for Walcott to find a way back into the starting 11. I'm not sure that will happen anytime soon. But yeah, the interesting one, Elyounoussi seems to have sort of settled on his spot. Djenepo's not started in a while, so you kind of think, well, has he kind of had his opportunity? So it does seem like it's between Elyounoussi, Armstrong, and Redmond when he returns.
Are you happy enough with that, Glenn?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting seeing the two that played on Friday. To me, they're the best two footballers. They've got the best touch. They're more likely to keep possession. They're more likely to put a good through ball through to someone. Okay, that didn't quite happen on Friday, but I was quite comfortable with them. Redmond does have more pace, and when he chooses to use it, he is more of a more likely to burst past someone. So horses for courses, I guess. If you're playing against a fullback who's a little bit slower, then Redmond's your guy. But I thought those two did well enough on Friday. Certainly, again, I wouldn't see any reason to change that for the game against Norwich. I thought the two of them did well. But if you play against a team that plays a high line on the halfway line, then you may want to include Nathan Redmond or Nathan Teller even as the wide players to try and get in behind them. But no, I thought the two of them did well, and fair enough. They stay in for me.
A couple of other bits to get to before we do the Norwich preview. Sai has been talking about the managerial vacancies, and obviously over the weekend there have been quite a few that have come up. Is it to be expected that Ralph might get linked to one or two of these jobs, Dan? Is that just part of the managerial merry-go-round and creating the headlines from lesser publications than yours? Are we going to see those rumours?
I don't think he's going to get linked to the Norwich job.
Villa.
I think he's already been. I think the Daily Telegraph have already reported that he's someone that they like. He's sort of high on their list, but then they named 5 or 6 managers in that piece, so he wasn't the only one. And it's kind of ironic, isn't it? 3 weeks ago, he probably wouldn't have been on anyone's list, and people would have been like, would they have minded if he did go to Villa? Whereas now they've won three of their last 4, and all of a sudden he's kind of back in vogue, and now it's kind of like hands off our manager. If he gets linked to a job, he gets linked to a job. That's kind of part and parcel of the kind of job he's in. And I think the only way that ever moves on is if Aston Villa come calling for Ralph. And I mean, I'm not kind of sat here on Sunday night at 20-8. I'm not entirely sure that will happen. It may do, and then the club will have a decision to make, and Ralph will have a decision to make. But I'd be shocked, kind of very shocked. He's kind of very secure in his job at Southampton. He likes the people he works with, which is clearly important, and he has a good relationship with all of them. So yeah, I'd be very surprised if Ralph was to be the one that sort of kicked up a fuss and demanded to go to Aston Villa. But stranger things have happened, but I can't see it happening.
I thought it was harsh. Smith sacking seems. I know I'm not his
You never
biggest
liked
fan.
him.
No, I didn't like him. I'm not hiding from that. I didn't like the guy, but I think it's pretty harsh. They bought some players in the summer, but they also sold their best player. So it's not. I think
I saw a stat. They've lost 18 games this calendar year.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe.
How many have Saints lost this year?
Fewer than that.
Is it fewer than that? Yeah.
Did you see the one about Dean Smith's the 10th Premier League manager to be sacked after a bad result against Southampton?
Yeah, that was an amazing.
I like that Ranieri's been done twice by us.
Yeah.
It's a shame that we've all seen it. That would have been a great conversation. Have you seen it, Glenn, or not?
No, I haven't. I was having a conversation with someone on Twitter earlier on. I remember it was Chris Wilder last year.
I'll give you a point for each.
Yeah. Nothing will beat the Glenn Hoddle one. I know it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the Glenn Hoddle one, he left us to go to Spurs. He played us. He got beat 3-1 at home. He got sacked the next day. That was beautiful.
And we brought out a DVD from memory. I think I've got it in the bookcase behind me. It was Roy Hodgson, Dave Bassett, Glenn Hoddle, Mark Hughes as well, Malky Mackay, Neil Warnock, Claudio Ranieri twice, Unai Emery, and Sanchez Flores, which was at Watford.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of their nameless, faceless managers. Yeah.
There's so many. Actually, yeah. Okay.
It'd be interesting, actually. I've just seen on one of the comments, actually, Nick Reed has asked, or he's just said, more worried about Simmons to Newcastle. What Steve and Glen would think about Simmons and that, because it's interesting that chief execs don't normally get linked with jobs, do they?
No, but we've got a good one, haven't we? So,
well, we think we do. It's still one of those things where you kind of almost never evaluate how good a job someone is doing in that sort of position until they've left, and you see how someone else gets on in similar circumstances. I mean, he's probably almost certainly doing a better job than the guy who came before him. But at the same time, who knows? I mean, somebody else might come in and I don't know whether they've got better contacts or they're then able to affect a sort of takeover that then means that all of a sudden the financial situation stabilizes. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, it's on the face of it, he seems to be. He says the right things, and largely the actions are backed up by the words that are said, which, to be honest, is probably all you can ask for at a club of our size in the league that we're in.
I think it probably will be defined actually on the takeover, if and when that goes through. I think that will kind of could end up being his sort of defining legacy, I reckon, because that's such a big issue, isn't it? You know, if he ends up leaving and that's not done, you kind of feel like, well, of course, you know, it's difficult to sell a club in a pandemic and so on, but you kind of feel like he's tasked with that. And, you know, if he can't do it, then that would certainly leave a question mark, I think.
He's a friend. Martin Simmons is a friend of the show as well. You got to remember that, because if we'd have done this with Ralph Kruger, I'd have ended up shooting myself. Because
let's let me get the exclusive first. We need to move on to Norwich, another international break, and then Norwich. I don't think we need to spend too long on this, but what have you made to their start of the season, Steve? It's quite an interesting win at the weekend, but not great.
Yeah, I mean, they came up against a team that's somehow in even worse form than they are. I mean, Norwich have picked up a couple of draws before going to Brentford at the weekend, and Brentford have, after they started really well and everyone was heaping praise on them, have suddenly just fallen off a cliff, to the extent that I think we're 3 points clear of them now, 2 or 3 points ahead of them. Yeah, I mean, I think Norwich. I mean, we know the sort of business side of things. They've been fairly open about their situation, whereby they'll go up, they'll have a go as much as they possibly can within their financial constraints, but they've got no interest in trying to sort of speculate to accumulate, which is fine. It's very admirable, and I think clubs, as a general rule, should be run sustainably. But if you're a fan and you've sold your best player for 40 million quid to a side that is kind of middling, really, let's be honest, and then you spend, and to be fair, Norwich has spent a fair bit of money this summer. They spent about 60 million quid all in, and they've got tangibly worse, which I think is a problem, and I think that's largely why Farke's ended up getting his first win in the season and then finding out he's been sacked half an hour later, because he's not managed to get a tune out of these players to enough of an extent that anybody sat above him in the boardroom is confident that they're even going to make a challenge to stay up. And it sounds as if the decision was basically made on Thursday at a board meeting. And it was just a case of when the rest of the members of the board would kind of ratify it. And I think, according to, I think it was your colleague, Dan, who said that they basically ratified it Saturday morning. So you had these weird pictures on the TV coverage of Delia Smith in the stand looking really stony faced, even though they were winning away from home. And obviously now we know why.
She'd been drinking.
Well, yeah, partly, but then presumably Brentford wouldn't give her access to the PA system and a microphone.
I'm just sad that now he's gone. That means we're not going to hear your impression anymore, Glenn, because we got some good feedback on your Daniel Farke impression from last week.
It was a one-line throwaway. We won't need to repeat that. He can go back to being a retired German porn star, which is what it looks like. Well, with Daniel Farke, I mean, basically you can look at all the sort of nitty gritty of the transfers they've made and not made, and players have sold and whatnot. They're exactly where they were 2 years ago. They're rock bottom of the Premier League, and I can, unlike with Dean Smith, I can totally see why they've pulled the trigger on him, because they're absolutely no better than they were 2 years ago. They're rock bottom of the league, and I'm sure that the chairman, whoever it is there, was just looking at it going, we're going to finish bottom. We're only going to get about 15 points. This is horrendous. I need to do something. So I'm not surprised. Be interesting to see who goes in there, because there's no obvious candidate unless they pull someone from abroad who we've never heard of. Though
Steve Bruce used to play for them.
Yep, Steve did mention Steve Bruce, who used to play for him back in it's probably early 80s before he went to Manchester United. So maybe Steve Bruce would fancy that job, and but whether he'd be the man to get him out of trouble, I mean, I think it's a free hit for whoever goes there, because if he does keep him up, it's a miracle.
Yeah,
and not expected to. But
Sam Allardyce.
Yeah, well, maybe, but you kind of hope that football's moved on a little bit, don't you, from the likes of Sam Allardyce? I mean, even Steve Bruce would be more progressive than Sam Allardyce.
I think Norwich I think have this belief that they're a fairly progressive club, and as a result, I don't think any of the usual suspects are going to be in contention. I mean, even Steve Bruce with his past club connections there, I think that's probably an outside shot.
Penny, who's watching tonight, she says it's going to be interesting to see who comes in at Norwich, and if they get that new manager bounce, it would just be like Saints to go and draw that game. How difficult is it, Dan, to prepare against a team when a new manager comes in? Is it an impossible task because you don't know what the setup's going to be, or do you just look at the squad that they've got and assess it on that?
Well, I think you first and foremost you look at the squad they've got and assess it on that. And if it's a manager, I don't know, let's say Frank Lampard ends up taking that job, whether he would or not, I don't know whether he even wants it, I'm not sure. But let's say it's someone like him, then you can go back and you can see how Derby played, see how Chelsea played, see what they may try and implement. I mean,
well, Billy Gilmour would definitely start.
Yeah, I think if anyone, I mean, I don't know where Norwich are at. I mean, are they thinking that they're going to mount an amazing comeback and stay in the league, and are they going to do that by playing expansive football? Probably not. So you'd imagine whoever comes in, if that is what they're going to try and do, would be somewhat pragmatic to try and sort of shore up at the back. And this whole manager bouncing, I mean, I don't particularly know. I mean, it hasn't really worked for Ranieri. What was the score in their first game? Like 5-0 or something ridiculous, wasn't it? And I know they beat Everton, but then it was like back down to reality against Southampton. I just don't know. I don't know. Norwich just aren't very good. Their players aren't very good. So I don't think too much is going to really change. I don't know. I mean, I would not be surprised if they drew against Southampton. No, but I'd be surprised if they went and beat Southampton.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of brings us on to our predictions. If you're watching this for the first time, this is the bit where we all get our predictions wrong. Nobody got the score right last week, which is not unheard of. I think Dan's currently in the lead, I think with 2 so far this season.
We did all predict a win, though, didn't we?
We did all predict a win, yeah. I think your exact words were, Steve, I reckon the floodgates are going to open and we'll score 3 or 4. So
should have done.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but do you want to go first with the prediction for the Norwich game, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll. The floodgates will definitely open this time, and we'll prove that
money on 0-0.
New manager bounce is not a thing. 3-0.
3-0. Glenn?
I feel like as we're on YouTube, we should have like Strictly Come Dancing paddles or whatever, and I'll 10. Now I'll go. I'm quite confident. I'll go 3-1 win. 3-1.
3-1. Dan, what are you saying?
2-1 Southampton.
2-1. Okay. Interesting tweet from Martin Cook this week on Twitter. He says, can you discuss the current situation with the B team on this week's pod? From being smashed every match to an unbeaten run with some commanding results. What's changed? The results he's referring to, the 5-0 against Newcastle, 4-0 against Aston Villa, a couple of 1-0s against Reading and Wolves. And all of a sudden, they're up to 8th in the table. What's changed, Steve?
By the sounds of it, they've changed the system. Basically, they've taken a pragmatic decision that while the idea of playing the same system throughout the whole club is an admirable one, in the B team they simply don't have the players to play that system. So they've basically allowed Horseman to pick whatever system he deems suitable for the players that he's got available. I think part of the thing is also that the first 2 wins we got were against you say Reading and Wolves, didn't you?
Yeah.
Both of those are fairly poor B teams, I think, in terms of their league position. And then the last 2 where we've obviously won quite heavily, we've had the benefit of Will Smallbone playing in the centre of midfield. And as a guy who's played a number of first team games, you would think that the quality that he possesses and the awareness of the game situation is head and shoulders above most of the players that he's up against.
Yeah. Nathan Teller played in the first one as well.
Teller played one of them as well. So yeah, when we're able to include players of that caliber in the team, then all of a sudden we then do have a distinct advantage over a lot of the sides we're playing.
Is it as simple as that, Dan?
Not been conceding goals either.
You were chatting, Dan, with somebody on the website yesterday about this, and I think they made a similar point about the players that were coming back in and were available now for the B team. Just it does make a difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And if the B team are, for example, playing against a West Brom who have someone of a decent level, when they played West Brom and I was at that game, they had like kind of 22, 23-year-olds and they were playing against 16, 17-year-old defenders. So then when you add someone in of Teller's quality or Smallbone's quality, particularly at that level, it makes a huge difference. I mean, I've not seen them play for the B team, but just based on seeing West Brom with a couple of experienced players they had starting, I think one of them had been out on loan in like League One, League Two. That made a massive difference for them against Southampton. So if Southampton then have Premier League kind of quality player, or Premier League players with experience coming in, that in itself is going to make a huge difference. And you'd expect them to be a kind of a class apart from the opponents that they're playing if they're up against 16, 17-year-olds. I think it's probably important to say that the club, I think there was always kind of an element of sort of sympathy at Horseman's door in the terms of he just hasn't had the sort of players at his disposal. I think they do view him as, which I suppose is a good thing, they do view him as a very capable coach. And I guess now they say, well, look, we've kind of given him the players and he's got the results. So yeah, in terms of where they kind of stand on him, of course it looked very bad on paper and no one was happy that they were kind of getting spanked every single week, but they've seen that, they do value him as a coach and they do think he's a very good coach. And now he's had a couple of more experienced players come back in to the B team, then, results have turned. And I do wonder, had it not been for the pandemic, would these players be playing more for the B team? It's simply because Ralph wanted to boost his squad, especially last season, that a lot of these players left the B team to go up and train with the first team, which then obviously left a gap in the B team. So then the under 18s needed to come up, and it was kind of an unfortunate chain of events. But yeah, long may it continue, because if they're successful, then the last thing you want is a loser's mentality sort of players coming up to the first team that are getting battered every single week. So if they can start getting a few wins and a few good wins, then you may see a few more of them knocking on the door to go and train with the first team.
And a great win for the women's team as well this weekend. It was a clean sweep, which was good. Before we finish, I must mention Colt Baker, who, if you don't know Colt, he's one of our patrons. He's Stateside Saint on Instagram. He's a Saints fan. He's from Dallas in Texas, and he was at the game on Friday. So I'm delighted, first of all, that we won, and secondly, that there was a decent goal for him to see. Dallas to St. Mary's Stadium, how many miles? Anyone?
About 5,000, I guess.
I'd have said 4,000, but it's a big guess.
Split the difference, 4,700. So not far out. But well done to Colt. I think that means he needs to be back at St. Mary's on the 1st of December now. Is it the Leicester game? If he's going to be a lucky omen. So thank you.
I'll be back for that one, which obviously means we're going to lose.
Oh, great. There we go. Thank you, chaps. That's about it for episode 175. My thanks, as always, to Steve and to Glenn and to Dan. Thank you, guys. Have a good week. Thanks also to our Matt Letizia tier patrons. That's Colt Baker, who we mentioned, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, and Phil Cook. Also, Nick Reed in our Francis Benali tier. New patron alert. I was going to have a little alarm or a bell. Hello to Kyle Andrew, who joined our Bobby Stokes tier this week. So thanks for your support, Kyle. Thank you for all the questions as well in the comments section, by the way. To find out more about becoming a TSP patron, you can check out the website where you can join the fun for just £5 a month. And you can find all the recent episodes of the Total Saints podcast on our YouTube channel. So do check that out and hit subscribe. Don't forget to follow this podcast wherever you're listening. And on the socials, we are at Total Saints Pod. You'll find us on Twitter and Facebook. And it's always great to hear from you during the week. You can also email us, if you like, via the website. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and enjoy another international break.